See, in Canada, this is all kind of foreign to us because we look at it, and I got a voter's guide the other day that says you have to have an ID. You can vote in advance, but you need to show up in person. There's particular circumstances where you can mail in your ballot, but you need to have ID. And what's the other thing? Oh, they even emphasize that the machines, the tabulators, are not connected to the internet under any circumstances, and that all sides from different parties are there to verify and vouch for the vote. So I think it's a really good system, but it sounds like in some states they have kind of digressed into becoming, no offense to banana republics, but kind of like a banana republic. Am I being too harsh?
I don't think that's too harsh. And here's the thing is that it's like every attempt to take common sense and steps to ensure the integrity of our elections that are common sense and that a broad majority of Americans would agree with are resisted at every single turn by the Democratic Party in the United States. I mean, when you have an election, you should be able to audit that election. You should be able to count up the number of votes, make sure that they match the number of registered voters in each precinct. This isn't hard. This has been pulled off easily for generations in this country. But now we have it so that you can't even audit the election to assure people that it's on the up and up. There's nothing more dangerous and destabilizing to a society than a widespread belief that the election is not legit.
Okay, so you use the word dangerous, Jim. Why do you say it's dangerous?
It leads to social instability and unrest. I mean, look, there was a riot at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, which was the day that Congress was to meet and to certify the election results. And there were members of Congress, and this is actually not unusual. Here's another myth to bust. The idea that some members of Congress disputing the results of the election is some sort of new thing that only happened in 2020. That's not true. The Democrats have actually disputed the results officially on the floor of Congress for every election I've covered since George W. Bush. In fact, I know Democrats stood up and objected to the certification of the 2000 election, the 2004 election. Now, it's maybe it's all legit and on the up and up, but the problem is that we don't have systems in place to make sure and to prove to people and to assure them that this election was fair in 2020, that this election was run fairly, it was counted fairly, and that you can have confidence, even if you're disappointed, that Joe Biden was the legitimately elected president in the year 2020. But
Okay, so let's
prove that.
let's deal with this issue then. Okay. So clearly there is, and I have, like you, seen poll after poll in the United States that show at least half of Americans still think the 2020 election was stolen.
Yeah.
That's the brutal reality. And part of that is because you don't have kind of common sense checks and balances, including audits on those results. I mean, it's absurd. It's kind of like you can't be serious that this is happening. And so going forward, though, I mean, because anyone who dares question it, then, namely half the country, are said as again labeled or demonized as election deniers, and you don't have a credible case. And yeah, you've waged all these court actions and you've taken it before different judges, and you have yet to kind of show that there was fraud. So how do you respond to that response that you guys are just sore losers?
Well, in every single case that I'm aware of, the case was dismissed before evidence could even be presented. That judges just threw out the case before the case could frankly even be made. Before you could bring forth evidence, evidence, if not proving, at least indicating and asking for answers to these incredible abnormalities that had never happened in American elections before. Judge after judge after judge threw it out and said, no, you don't have standing, or there's other sort of procedural error that you had made. And you can almost understand that because a judge doesn't want to overturn an election. In fact, this is why election fraud is such a pernicious and dangerous crime in the United States, it's
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to get away with. There are very few prosecutions of even the most absurdly obvious and stupid election crimes and fraud that happens in this country,
Mm-hmm.
because judges will just say, "Well, it's moot anyway." How do you even prove that these votes that this one person stuffed into this ballot box were the ones that threw the election? You can't prove that, and I'm not going to throw the entire state or country into complete chaos by having this case go forward. That happens over and over and over again. And the reason why cheating happens is because cheating is rewarded and it's not punished. And you get more of what you reward and you get less of what you punish. And what we have now
Mm-hmm.
are incentives to reward cheating.
Indeed. Okay, so just to follow up then, if today is 2024, November 5 is around the corner, has anyone weighed on this to ensure that there is confidence in the electoral system in these key battleground states and say, no, this is not going to happen again? Quite frankly, it's confusing. Where's the GOP? If the Democrats are overwhelmingly, because I'm not suggesting in some partisan way that only one party's guilty of electoral fraud, but where are the Republicans? Why are they not weighing in to vigorously oppose this kind of electoral fraud, or are they?
I think that there's some Republicans are in some states and jurisdictions. As I mentioned before, I'm sure your audience knows, the election for president is not a national plebiscite selection. It is a
Mm-hmm.
state by state race, and each state has a certain number of electoral votes. And if you collect 270 electoral votes from each of those states across the country, you're the next president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
In some of those states, Republicans are taking steps to ensure that the election is fair. There are some states that have enacted voter ID laws, although you'll have also judges in those states throw out those laws under specious circumstances, knowing that all they have to do is not allow it right now so that we can get to the next election, because legal procedures take some time, and they will certainly take until after the election.
Mm-hmm.
There are other Republicans who are just not all that enthusiastic about Donald Trump, and so they won't take steps to ensure it's basically one man, one vote in their state,
Mm-hmm.
because they know the outcome of it. They are part of the uniparty, as it were. Although we have two
Okay.
parties in the United States, Democrats and Republicans, there's a uniparty, and a lot of Republicans are in that uniparty, aligning with the Democrats for an agenda that, frankly, most of the American people have not voted for. So we
Okay.
have seen some progress on it. We haven't seen enough, and it's again, it's dangerous to society. It's destabilizing when
Mm-hmm.
half the country will continually think that the election is not fair, it is not on the up and up, that there
Mm-hmm.
was shenanigans going on, and that the election was
Mm-hmm.
stolen. The way you remedy that is not to scream at people like me and call me an election denier. It's to create a election and voting system that is auditable, and so that prove it to me that this
Mm-hmm.
election is legit. If you can't prove it, why should I believe it?
Exactly. Yeah. Let's be adults and have a healthy discussion and say we run on facts and evidence. We don't just simply throw open the door and say, yeah, whatever you want, we'll trust you completely because we don't want to be called names. So this is kind of a bizarre kind of situation that begs a lot of serious questions. So speaking of the issues in the election, I want to summarize them quick, and then I want to ask you what you think are the top issues. And I'm going to rattle through them quickly here. We've got obviously the economy, inflation, affordability, closing the open border, energy independence. We've got stopping the censorship racket that's going on, the reaction to wokeism or this cultural Marxism. We've got the whole issue of overspending. We've got record deficits and debts. And of course, we've got concerns regarding the so-called deep state in the sense that the state is too large and is self-serving and is actually not trustworthy if we look at the FBI and all kinds of other intelligence agencies. And then, of course, we've got a myriad of foreign policy issues that the United States is facing, from China to Iran, Israel, and Ukraine. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but what are the top issues that are really driving then this election in your view, Jim?
David, I didn't write them all down, and I think you had 30 of them on there. So let me see if I can remember them. I think obviously the number one issue is the economy. I think it's a hard message, obviously, I think, for the current administration to win on. Voters, no matter how much propaganda they get from our legacy media in the United States, which is a propaganda arm for the Democrat Party and nothing more. It's not a legitimate media anymore.
Wow.
Not by any stretch. But, people remember what their bank accounts looked like from 2016 to before the pandemic hit.
Indeed.
They know that. They know what the price of a dozen eggs was in 2019 compared to now. They know what the price of a gallon of gas was in 2019 compared to now. And all polls show, this is where you can't actually trust polls, when they ask about what issues they care about. And the economy is number one, and Donald Trump wins that hands down.
Yeah, no, but it's truly a remarkable case study. We all know that the media plays an essential role in any free and democratic society, as they speak truth to power, as they are a check for those in power. And yet, in this case, we see it's almost like Kamala Harris is an entirely free ride when it comes to the legacy media, at least. They're not really asking her hard questions about what do you stand for, what her past positions have been, and really holding her to account. So that's a key dynamic in this whole election, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And it's because just as Joe Biden hasn't really ever run his administration, Kamala Harris will not run her administration either. She'll be a figurehead for an agenda that is not her own and that is not actually, we're not going to be able to vote on it because nobody will be able to talk about it, which is more globalism. It's net zero, so that we destroy our economy by crushing our energy industry, in this idea that we can change the weather 100 years from now if we all embrace Marxism. That's the kind of thing that we don't get to vote on because nobody's allowed to talk about it. Nobody asked Kamala Harris about it. And so this is why, they went from get her off the ticket because she's so unlikable to, okay, guys, this is the lifeboat we've been given. There's no other option. Let's prop her up as some combination of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, which is what they're trying to do between now and November 5th.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you for joining this far-reaching conversation, an update, a primer, if you will, about the upcoming November 5 election. It strikes me in our conversation that there's no doubt that the United States faces some critical choices on which path they're going to choose. And ironically, it seems that the American experiment, grand design of an emphasis on freedom and democracy that started in 1776 is at a pivotal point. And so, Jim, I want to thank you for joining us as we talked about this upcoming election.
David, it's always a pleasure, and let's hope for a victory for freedom next month.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.